welcome back to Chewing It Over. I'm Farouk Bello with Physio Matters First Steps. Unfortunately, my today is the day my camera decided not to be functioning very well, so unfortunately, you will only be able to hear my voice. But today, I have Lewis with me on the show, and we're going to be discussing. Oh, and Lewis just disappeared. Well, we have Lewis on the stream with us today, and we're going to be discussing basically about rotations as a new graduate physiotherapist. Now, a lot of people are aware that the general path that a lot of people take is coming out of university. You you go on your rotations, you do your rotations for, try and complete your rotations before you eventually progress. But today on the podcast, on Chewing It Over, we're going to discuss with Lewis, and I'll allow him to introduce himself in a second. We're going to be talking about if uh, it's really necessary or what he feels about the need for rotation. So I'll give it to you, Lewis, to introduce yourself. Oh, I don't think Lewis can hear me. Uh, Let me try and sort this out. Lewis, can you hear me? Hello? No, I don't think you can hear me. Either way, yeah, it's not very great, just only seeing FB, my initials on the screen. But either way, I'll start off the conversation talking about, oh yeah, Lewis's laptop just crashed, so he will just be reconnecting with us in a second. So we can consider this a more of like a podcast style, if if before Lewis pops back on. All right, he's back. Let me see. Can you hear me, Lewis? Can you hear me? Lewis. Yeah, I don't think you can still hear me either way. But I'll begin the chat. So my opinions on my current opinions on rotations and how necessary they are in regards to as a new grad. Obviously, I've me personally, for those who know, I finished last year, I qualified last year, and I myself was starting my rotations. I'm currently on my second rotation, which is a community neurological and stroke placement. Now, for me, I find it very interesting the whole debate on do you really need to go and do the whole rotations or do you just go straight into it? Which as when Lewis comes back, you find out from him that he went straight into an MSK role, coming straight out of university, because he already knew what he wanted. Let's quickly see. Lewis, can you hear me? If you can, let me know if you can hear us on the stream. I don't think he can. Um, but while we get that sorted out, I'll just carry on with what I was saying. So someone like Lewis went straight into MSK, coming straight out of university. However, you will find that people who are not entirely sure exactly or want to get the key experience in all different areas will decide to opt into rotations to get the diversified portfolio under the belt. Basically, doing inpatient, outpatients, community, and getting all the experience. But there's always a growing debate of do you really need to? And my stance on it is personally that I don't think everyone needs to do all the rotations, but that's just me because I think if you have a certain idea of where you already want to be uh, going forward, like you find a lot of some MSK practitioners where they went straight into MSK coming out of university, and that's just because they already knew where they wanted to go straight out. Uh, but some other people also would do all the rotations and only to come back, whereas they already knew where they were going to end up already. So the debate is whether or not you feel that getting all their experience in all the different areas is as beneficial as just going straight into the area you want where you want to be immediately. Now, it would be great to get other people's comments as to whether or not you think that going straight, if you know exactly where you want to be, for example, Lewis is going to try and sort out his laptop, so we'll give us about 5 minutes. So we're good. We have time. We have a bit of time. So the question is, do you just go straight into straight into your career field where you already know if you want to be a respiratory physio, trying to get a static job straight as a band five, or you do your rotations, get some overall experience in the whole process, basically, before going straight into before then, for example, picking up a static band 5 or picking up a static band 6 post as a coming out of university. And this is always one that you'll find different people have different opinions on. It would have been great to get Lewis's opinion, but just give us 5 minutes while I try and sort out to see what's happening, because I think he did have some great opinions, because he's straight out of university going in. He was already in MSK, and because that's kind of what he knew he wanted to be, so he's already been static, so he's kind of avoided the whole rotation, going doing respiratory, neuro, and everything before finding himself back to where he already knew he wanted to be. So give me 5 minutes and we'll just try and sort this out. Hello? Oh, come on. Can you hear me, Lewis?
I'm on. Sorry about that.
There we go. Finally, we got you back.
Sorry.
Only took a few minutes, but no worries. You probably wouldn't have heard most of what we said, but I was just having a conversation with myself. I was going to let you introduce yourself so you let people know who exactly you are before we carry on our conversation.
Yeah, cool. So my name is Lewis Lovegrove. I'm an MSK physiotherapist working in Connect Health.
Oh, nice.
That's
So before you came back on, I was just I was talking about the need for rotations. I know you personally, you went straight to MSK coming out of university, and what was your thought process behind that? Why did you decide not to do the whole rotation Shabazz and go straight into MSK?
I felt like I had quite a good experience with the kind of placements that I had. So I did have a good variety, that kind of gave me a good opportunity to kind of dabble in a few things quite early on. Whereas in some placement opportunities, you might not get that chance to maybe experience some that they have to offer. But straight away, I knew that I wanted to go down the MSK route anyway. I did sports therapy. That was because I missed out on a couple of A levels, so kind of went the long way around doing sports therapy, then going through to physio. So I always had that kind of MSK background and always knew that that's where I ended up and where I wanted to be. I think at the time, the way the job opportunities just kind of came about, that's why I went down the Connect Health route and didn't choose to go into placement rotations coming straight out of university. I'm not massively keen on doing anything respiratory wise as well, and somehow I didn't do that in any of my placements, and then obviously I didn't want to do that on a rotation, so for me it was the right thing to do at the time.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing that I was mentioning before you came back on, is that often people do the whole rotations. I told you, I myself, I'm currently doing rotations, but my case is a bit different as to why I'm doing rotations. Was I'm international students, I have options are not as vast, but also the rotations that were offered at where I am now, we're kind of aligning with what uh, I would want to do in the future down the line. So I'm doing community now. I'd quite enjoy community work. I never had a neuro replacement, so I thought that would be interesting. And my next one is actually MSK outpatients. Obviously, me coming from, I'm a person that I consider myself an athlete and did a lot of sports, so I would like MSK. So they had those options. But for some other people, what do you think? For example, someone who you already knew you wanted to be an MSK physio, you that right, you were going to go down. But some other people will say, why not also get all the experience, do the whole rotations, and then, get a static after maybe, 2 years, 3 years of rotating. I don't know how long people rotate generally. I think it's about 2 years, isn't it? Get all the other experience and then, get your static post. What do you say, to that line of thinking?
Definitely do it. If it's what you want to do, then I think that the main thing here is not to think, well, somebody's gone down that route, then I must follow that. Somebody's gone down that route, then that seems the right route to go down. I think it's very much dependent on one, where you feel like you want to go as a clinician, which very early on in your career you can't really determine anyway. So it's at that moment in time what feels best for you. And there's so many things to factor into that as well. It's where you're living. Are you still at home? Are you renting somewhere else? You're in a new city. You're with your parents. Like, there's so many things that play into that. So I think it's very much dependent on, if you don't know what you want to go into at that moment in time, then rotations are perfect, aren't they? You've got that hospital establishment, you've got all those people around you, you're trying out different things that you may not have done before in physio. Then yeah, I'd say that's probably the best place to start.
Yeah, I think that's also the argument that's made for a lot of people who eventually decide to do all the rotations, is that you may not exactly know immediately where where you want to be. For example, you're not entirely sure. Do you want to be neuro? Do you want to be MSK? So you want to get that overall experience before you go into it. But my caveat to it is that you know I do think everyone does what is best for themselves at the end of the day. What you weigh the opportunity cost of going straight into MSK, going straight into this, and you maybe sacrificing this. But I also think that for those who go straight to for example, there's private line which you are private work, there's NHS, and over time there's a lot of push into think a lot of people when they're pushing in universities or things like that or coming out, there's always everybody thinks you have to go into NHS rotations. That's where you need to
Mm.
be first before you start looking into private. I know, in job fairs, you do have some private companies come in and then they talk to you, but the overall narrative is very pushed towards, you go into the NHS and do your rotations and come out. And they don't really, sometimes I think we overlook to say private, the opportunities that are there in private, like yourself, you work in Connect Health, which is a private practice, and you're still gaining your benefits. So why didn't is there any particular reason you didn't choose the NHS route, or is it just where the opportunities laid?
Yeah, I think definitely the latter. Just at the time when I was looking for jobs, that popped up, and to be honest, that in a way I was probably so focused on just going down that avenue at the time. No matter if there was any rotational jobs about, I didn't really pay much attention to them, rightly or wrongly. That was literally just the avenue I wanted to go down. I liked the GDP that Connect was advertising, a lot of the social stuff as well. I felt like I kind of connected to, and pardon the pun. So yeah, it was just kind of the route I just went down, and I feel like there's been a lot of really good opportunities for me along the way, and I'm really happy with that route I'm currently taking. But like you say, I think a lot of people, if they haven't come across these other companies within the fairs at university or whatever, the only other option that people know about is the NHS, isn't it? The
Yeah.
rotational side of things. And a lot of people that apply for the jobs, obviously have a vast array of people applying for physio, but I mean, maybe 30, 40, 50% of people are going to be maybe working as a band four prior to so they're well established in that hospital setting. They know what it's about. The only next step they want to take is having that physiotherapy job role to then being able to become a physio. But apart from that, they have all the background of working in the hospital. They know how it works. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. One thing I would say though is with Connect, you do get a lot of support, and although it's private sector, the NHS, whatever, you do get a lot of support from that regard. Whereas I think going into private practice, working on your own, is very, very different, and that's not something that I would have been interested in doing straight out of university. For obvious reasons. One, you don't have the support, and it's a lot. It's a lot to take on. I feel if you don't have those people to be asking questions to, particularly early on in your career. Not that's definitely not an avenue I would have wanted to explore.
Yeah, I think that particular point you just made is one that I think it's very interesting. Where I've look, interestingly, I haven't met too many people, but I am aware that there are some people who go straight out of physio university. I was about to say physio school. I don't know why I keep saying physio school. Out of
So
university.
American.
Yeah, exactly. I keep saying physio school. And then they come out of university, and I think there are a few set of people who go straight doing their own thing, and
Mm,
my opinion on that is, I think doing it as on a side as well as having if you have even if it's part time, where you still have, as you said, like a connect, like an NHS thing. So you're working, you have support of people who are senior, as well as you're doing your own thing on the side. I think that's a good balance. If you want to straight out of university going solo, I think that's you really have to be confident in your abilities, or possibly you have I know some
mm.
people with previous experience already, where they've done sports therapy and they've been working as something else prior in the similar field for years on end, and they can just go straight into, or they really and truly they already knew that they were going to do physio for a specific reason, for example. So Yeah, with that, with us, I think make a bit more sense. But as exactly as you said, I think it's a bit, going straight into it is always, yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's not advisable because everyone does what they want. But for me personally, I would say it's a bit, I would say it's scary just if you don't have any support. And you know, you
Yeah,
mentioned
definitely,
support.
because it's not just from the experience point of view. It's the I suppose it's a business model as well. That if
Mm,
you're working independently, you've got all that to kind of cater and try and figure out as well as the clinical stuff. And no, I definitely couldn't imagine being in that position.
just doing it by yourself alone. Now you mentioned support. I know you mentioned support. I know that's something I think it was David who'd have been here with us, but he mentioned he was talking about that. Now, you mentioned you feel supported. The amount of support, obviously, it'll be difficult because you don't have anything else to compare it with. I was going to between NHS but
Mm.
overall, imagine you feel like you're supported very well working in what type of support do you get offered, because most people will know what, from NHS people. They'll say, okay, they get this, they get CPDs, they get some things, and this. What type of support is offered where in the place where you work as a band five coming out of uni?
So yeah, we have a lot of online stuff, so a lot of online teaching where we get 1 day a week to kind of run through that with other people on the course.
Mm,
Within clinic, there's obviously always people floating around, but you have to bear in mind it's more of a community setting, so you're not within a hospital.
mm,
So there is people working there, but it's not just like there's hundreds of people as opposed to maybe, well, not hundreds, but you get what I mean. But,
yeah,
but from a support side of things, it's built around kind of, you have your seniors, you have your team leads, whatever. So there's always people there to kind of pick their brains, or if you need additional help, it is always there and required. But the good thing about connectors as well, they're quite forward thinking with IT. So obviously that's changed for everybody since the COVID, the pandemic. But things like Microsoft Teams, there's so many different ways to be able to connect to people and get their opinion on things. So that in a way has been fortunate. We've obviously connected in ways that never have been able to before. So, for instance, with Teams, we have like regular meeting sessions to discuss patient cases, and you can then discuss with people that you wouldn't regularly work with in other clinics, which
nice.
is really nice. So then you're touching base with other people. Which obviously you wouldn't get in a hospital, because I suppose if you're then siloed to your particular area, you never really, unless you meet them at lunchtime, you're never really going to, or you're friends with them, of course, you wouldn't get the opportunity. Um, but yeah, there's plenty of support structures in place for your own development.
Nice. That's good. It's good to hear that there's a good amount of support because I think that's something people always are worried about, and coming out of university, I understand why people are generally always worried about are they going to be supported in private, because I think unjustly and unfairly, sometimes there are stigmas regarding private practices versus NHS. I think even Jack has talked about this before possibly on the same chewing it over before about
Mm.
sometimes people think, oh, it's all about money or it's all about this when you have a private practice, and you forget that. I don't think it's only about that. I think there's a lot of development that could go into it. I don't have any private practice, but this is based off the what hearing people like yourself who are actually working in private practice. But I don't know. Does because Connect is it only MSK? I know it's always not MSK, but it's mainly MSK, isn't it?
Yeah, it started off as just MSK
Mm,
providers, but now they're kind of venturing elsewhere. So psychology, mental health route, I think, is a new avenue that they're exploring. But yeah, that's another good thing about the organisation. There's loads of other professionals within that MDT approach that you can kind of pick their brains about,
yeah,
which is good. You're not then just siloed to your physios, I suppose.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that is another positive from that side of things.
Okay. No, next thing, if we, no, no, listen, I think that's a nice transition into the next thing I want to talk about. We have about 9 more minutes. One was progression wise, because that's the next thing. A lot, if you're like
Mm.
myself, who I always think about what's next. I'll be honest with you right now, as a band five, I'm thinking when do I go up next? What can I do? How do I get to the next level? I don't like being stagnant or static in one place. And most people know about
Mm.
in NHS, the progression of, you start at band five, and there's been well, actually, speaking on this, there's been a lot of, I think I saw a few tweeted things about, some people would go band five and they spend, 2 years, 3 years as band five before they go up to the next band. Some people get shorter, 8 months, a year before they go up to the next band. What's the scene like in somewhere like in where you place like you're working private? Is it adaptive? Is it supportive to push you up to the next level? Um, or is it
Mm.
just what would you say it's like?
Yeah, I think, like you said, the latter again. If they will be supportive for you to push on, if they feel that that's kind of the necessary next step, which is good, because then there's no boundaries or no limits in that regard, is there? You can kind of progress at your own pace and kind of the avenue that your direction is taking. But yeah, it's still the same though. There still needs to be the job opportunity for that to arise. So whoever, if you're ready to take that next step, the job opportunity still needs to be there. But like you say, it's just about taking that when that comes about. So there's similar regard that if there's not a band six role within the NHS, you can't wait as a band five to then go into that. They just can't kind of magic up a role, can they? If that's the case, and the same within Connect, but they certainly do support you to take that necessary next step.
Next step. I think that's very important. A lot of people is progressing and getting from one place to the other is as important as anything to a lot of people, and not knowing that you're not just staying in one particular area forever, and you're able to go up and change bands and move up, progressing. Uh, before we start wrapping things up, do you feel like is there anything particular? Obviously, it's difficult to look in things in retrospect if they never happened. But are there any things that
Mm.
apart from MSK, you'd have been interested in, just out of curiosity? Any other areas, or at what point did you know that you were going to you're going to go down this route?
Yeah, I suppose getting some rotations in more MSK based areas that would overlap quite nicely. Obviously, your neurosurgeries and your orthopedics, but I was quite lucky that I did have a good placement within both of those. But obviously, it still doesn't reflect upon having a good rotation within those. So just your fundamental MSK stuff, I suppose, rotating around those before coming back into a static MSK post is important nonetheless. So that would probably be my only, if I was to look back in retrospect, it would have been nice to do those before coming into this static MSK post. But apart from that, I don't, like I said at the beginning, I really didn't want to go down the respiratory route, and somehow I managed to avoid that in my placements, which meant then obviously I didn't need to go on call or anything like that. So from that perspective, I've been quite lucky in that the routes just panned out really nicely for me, and I'm quite happy in the direction that it's going. So in retrospect, there's always things that you'd like to improve, but I can't complain too much at this moment in time.
Nice, nice. I like hearing that. And I think final questions are: where do you think um, where do you see yourself in the next couple of years? Next couple of years currently from now.
Oh, that's a question and a half. Hopefully back to some more normal times. But yeah, just carrying with what I'm doing, just taking the opportunities as they come about, and see where that lands up, because who knows what's around the corner,
Yeah.
job opportunity wise, or opportunities within what I'm working in at the moment. Anything can change, but it's just riding that wave, isn't it, and see where it
Yeah,
pans out.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, quick question: when did you qualify? How long ago did you qualify?
I qualified last January, and should have really started February, March time, but COVID put a bit of a halt on that. So it was about April time I started in the end. So
So
I've been
you
working
so
for
you work
just over a year. Yeah.
just over a year, and you can imagine you've been enjoying it. Before I let you go, any particular with MSK, you have a lot of people then specialize in particular areas. Any areas you're more akin to at the moment with the year of experience, or is it just you're just taking it still?
Yeah, just trying to understand all the body at the moment. I did a lot of my kind of dissertation and a lot of research based stuff on low back pain. So that's still kind of an area that interests me. But the more you get into working, the more you realise what you just don't know, and it's just trying to become a generalist specialist, I suppose, trying to understand everything within the bodies, particularly within the community, because you can get anything coming through. But no, it's really enjoyable, and the support you get with that, with all the ADP stuff, it is great tying it in. So nothing specialist route at the moment. Definitely not in that position. Just trying to trying to understand
take,
everything.
take it as it goes. Yeah, absolutely. That's good to hear.
That's
For,
it. Definitely, definitely.
for me, it's been very interesting having this conversation with you about the world of private versus rotations. I think for me, my point, my ideology towards rotations doesn't really change, which is ironic because I am on the rotations. I think that everyone has to do what is best for themselves, but I don't think I don't
Mm.
think people then may disagree with this, but I don't think you need to do all the rotations. I think to an extent, for a lot of people, some people, it might be even a waste of time um, doing, because the argument is you'll get some experience in here and there, you get some, but I think even the opportunity cost of that is you want to be, for example. I won't use MSK because I'll be cheating you because you're already here. You want to be a respiratory physio, for example. You know this from a long time, and then you're gonna do general, neuro, MSK. Do it like over a year or over a year and a half doing other things where you really and truly don't really want to end up there, all in the name of getting experience. Whereas you could probably have just gone straight into respiratory, or do one or two, do one rotation, maybe somewhere else, go into respiratory, and then get that specialist knowledge which you actually want. And that would actually potentially even help you progress further. Because I know it's a lot easier to progress if you're already for example, if you're in a static post in MSK for a year and a half, it's easier for you to progress to the first six than if you did 6 months neuro, 6 months respiratory, then you're only doing 6 months MSK, then you want to go jump on.
That's it. Yeah. It's kind of the risk you take, isn't it, with the rotations? Particularly at the moment, I know a couple of people that I went to university with who have been in a rotation longer than they expected, and then they're not rotating into a field that they might have done before just because the pressures of the pandemic have placed. Now, that's just really unfortunate and kind of the times that we're in, but it is a bit of a risk that I suppose you take with those, that it's not always going to be that kind of progressive element of what you want to do. It's what pops up within that rotation, and you may get the rotations that you want at the time, but
Yeah.
like you say, you may get 15 months, 2 years down the line of like, hang on, I've not actually rotated anything that I'm really interested in at the moment. Still haven't experienced the other things, and now we're 2 years down the line. Hopefully that doesn't often happen, but who knows, it
Yeah.
could.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit it right with the risk. There's a level of risk of, you said, you don't want to I don't saying waste is a harsh word, where you don't want to use 2 years doing something you're really not
Mm,
interested in, only to get to the one you're interested in after 2 years, and then you're not like, okay, now I can stay here, where you've just done 2 years and quote unquote there's experience, is always experience again, but as you said, it's a slight risk. If something like this pandemic puts you in, you're now rotating, you're now in a place longer than you really want to be. Sure, you can get the other non-clinical skills, but sometimes people they want to go down that clinical route. You're missing out on months of opportunity. But yeah, it's been a great chat. Do you have anything else to say before we sign off?
no, just do you at the end of the day. Whatever pops up, you go down the route that works for you. There's no right or wrong way, is there?
Nice. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Thanks a lot, Lewis, for coming on the show
No
to give us
worries.
some good insights about the life of a private physio coming out of uni. I appreciate you coming on. And thank you all for listening. Everyone who listens I keep saying podcast. I'm very used to doing my own podcast. But take care, everyone, and we will see you on the next Chewing It Over episode. Take care.